In April of 2011, 24-year-old Trayvon Wyn was visiting relatives in Brooklyn, New York, while living in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He was a father to a 16-month-old daughter and expecting his second child with his pregnant girlfriend. On the evening of April the 23rd, Wyn was standing outside his uncle's chicken restaurant in Brooklyn's Flatbush district, waiting for a ride from his cousin who was inside. As he stood there, he was engaged in a conversation on his cell phone. A man, dressed in black, wearing a hood, passed by Wyn, glancing at him as he entered the restaurant. Inside, the suspect seemed to adjust something at his waistband, then tucked it into his jacket pocket. Shortly afterward, he left the restaurant, but then unexpectedly circled back, pulled out a handgun, and shot Wyn twice in the chest. The assailant fled the scene immediately afterward. Wyn collapsed, struggling to stand, and was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead an hour later. The perpetrator was never identified. What shocked Wyn's family and some police officials was not just the murder, but also what happened afterward. A crowd gathered around Wyn as he lay bleeding, yet no one offered assistance or even tried to comfort him. Instead, multiple people merely watched him die on the sidewalk, and one man even captured a photograph of the dying man with his phone. Some family members later believed the murder was a case of mistaken identity. They argued Wyn had not been in Brooklyn long enough to earn any enemies, suggesting he was not the real target. The night before his death, a relative had been involved in a physical altercation, leading some to think that this relative was the actual intended victim. Wyn's mother was told by a witness that the gunman claimed he had shot the wrong person. Conversely, Wyn's girlfriend maintained he was the primary target, citing his history of trouble, which included convictions for assault and weapons possession, as well as a prison sentence. She believed the killer looked him in the face before firing, implying prior recognition. 14 years have passed since that tragic night, and Wyn's case remains unsolved, classified as cold. In a separate case, on January 26, 2021, 19-year-old Savano Oblitz Cano Tolentino left his home in Huánuco, Peru, intending to travel to Colombia with two men he recently met. Their plan was to buy clothes there and return to Lima to sell them. Around 2 weeks after his departure, Savano's family received a message from him. He explained that the two men he traveled with had stolen all his money, about $1,300. He reached out to his sister via WhatsApp, asking her to send money so he could return home. However, due to pandemic-related restrictions, she was unable to transfer the funds until the following day. After that, Savano vanished without any further contact. His family has not heard from him since, and his whereabouts remain unknown. 4 days after observers last heard from him on February 14, 2021, a neighbor of Oilas sent his family a viral TikTok video. The unsettling footage, recorded on a mobile device, was quickly recognized by Oilas's relatives. They immediately identified him. In the clip, he was seen standing on a bridge, being questioned by two strangers about his origin. These men appeared unfamiliar to Oilas and were not the con artists who had previously deceived him. When asked, he responded, "From Monaco, Peru." Suddenly, one of the strangers, who was not recording, lifted Oilas by the legs and plunged him over the bridge's guardrail. Though the video was shaky, it clearly showed him falling more than 100 feet before a loud impact echoed through the footage. One of the men then ordered, "Erase that. He's dead." The video was removed from TikTok within hours of going live. Distressed, Willis's family contacted law enforcement, who reached out to authorities in Median. They recovered his body and expressed confidence that they had identified a suspect, though no arrests had been made. Over 4 years have passed since the shocking and tragic murder of 19-year-old Savano Oblaz Kano Tolentino. Yet justice remains elusive, and his family continues to seek accountability for his brutal death. In early 2019, Elizabeth Liz Barza and her husband Sergio celebrated nearly 5 years of marriage. Residing in Tomball, a city within the Houston metro area, Liz worked as a data journalist for a pipeline inspection firm, while Sergio managed a flooring business owned by his father. The couple, childless at the time, shared a deep passion for Star Wars and Harry Potter. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they planned a trip to Universal Studios and Disney World in Orlando, with particular excitement about exploring the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Their departure was scheduled for January 26th, but 2 days earlier, on the night of January 24th, Liz and Sergio arranged a yard sale the following morning to raise extra funds for their trip. They posted signs locally but did not mention the sale on social media. Between 6:15 and 6:45 in the morning on January 25th, the couple began setting up their yard sale. By 6:48, Sergio left for work, leaving Liz alone at the sale. Minutes later, a neighbor called 911 after hearing 4 gunshots. Responding officers found Liz wounded with 4 gunshot wounds and hurried her to the hospital. Her family decided to donate her organs, but sadly, she died 4 days later. Authorities reviewed footage from several neighborhood doorbell cameras and reconstructed the events. At around 2 o'clock that morning, a black Nissan Frontier was seen driving through the neighborhood. The vehicle returned at 68 minutes past 6 and parked nearby, just before the shooting. Early in the morning, Sergio left for work, while a black pickup truck was seen 3 minutes later heading toward the couple's home. After making a U-turn, the driver parked behind Liz's car, then approached her as she was preparing for the yard sale. At 6:52 a.m., Liz greeted the stranger, who responded briefly before producing a revolver and shooting her 3 times in the torso. Once she collapsed to the ground, the attacker fired a final shot into her face, a fatal blow. Without hesitation, the killer ran back to their truck and drove away. 3 minutes later, they exited the neighborhood but then made a U-turn to re-enter, passing Liz's home again. Surveillance footage captured the pickup several more times within the neighborhood, yet it remains unclear when or if the killer left the area altogether. Tragically, the license plate of the black Nissan Frontier was not recorded, and while neighbor doorbell cameras caught the murder, the footage was too grainy to clearly identify the assailant. The suspect's gender remains unknown. They appeared to have long hair, possibly wearing a wig or disguise, but the poor quality of the footage prevents any definitive conclusions. Authorities are investigating multiple motives, but have yet to identify anyone with a clear reason to kill Liz. She and Sergio had no known enemies, and enjoyed hobbies like cosplay and attending Renaissance fairs. Liz was known for her kindness and generosity, actively volunteering at charities. Notably, she did not seem nervous or fearful when encountering the attacker. Her father suspects a professional contract killing because of how meticulously the crime was executed. For example, the use of a revolver meant fewer shells were left behind, and shooting her in the face after 3 torso shots appeared designed to ensure her death. The perpetrator made no attempt to steal anything. They simply approached, committed the murder, and fled, all within about 30 seconds. Sergio maintains his innocence, dismissing suspicions that he is involved since Liz was murdered just minutes after he left for work. He fully cooperated with law enforcement, taking a polygraph test, which he claims passed, and insists he has no idea who the killer is or why Liz was targeted. It seems she was specifically chosen, perhaps because the attacker knew she would be at the yard sale, which they had only decided to host the night before, without posting any social media announcements. 1.5 years following the tragic murder, Sergio encountered a woman named Amber, and eventually they entered into marriage. Law enforcement officials have stated that no suspects have been ruled out at this stage. Both Sergio and Liz's family remain hopeful that justice will be soon achieved and her case will be resolved. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch today's story. If you found it engaging, your support and subscribing would mean a lot. Additionally, remember to check out our short videos on platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Once again, we sincerely appreciate your viewing,